My name is Bentley Doyle. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. I've made a film, what I refer to as a tribute documentary to three parents of murder victims in British Columbia. And the reason I chose these three is we volunteered as advocates for victims of violent crime together. We volunteered for many, many years in this province of British Columbia. And I respect these folks so much. And I was just so impressed by them at a very early stage, and they were helping me because I got to talk to people that were going through a tragedy as I was. I wasn't a parent of a murder victim, though. It was my dear friend who was murdered. I was so impacted by the crime that these people became incredibly important to me. The entire organization did. And I became a director. They were directors. And we just stuck together through a lot of different challenges. And so I woke up one day and realized I wanted to make a film. This was after visiting with Chris Simmons, the first parent interviewed in the film. And I thought, well, if Chris isn't interested, then it goes nowhere. But he was interested. And then I wanted Rosalie and Ray because I liked the idea that all three of them became advocates for victims of violent crime in the aftermath of their own tragedies, as part of their way of dealing with their own tragedies, really. And so that was the commonality, those three having each suffered a loss of the same level, a child, which is, such a unique and horrifying situation that they can only relate to one another fully. Even my grief over my friend is different than theirs with their child. So the levels are all very high, but that's essentially what happened. So I made what became a bit of a road picture. I go to visit each parent in the order I met them: Chris, then Rosalie, then Ray. And what I also do, Dev, is I use file footage, media coverage of the trial. In our case, in the murder of Angie's, my friend Angie's murderer's case, I use that to be representative of what a family and what friends go through in a murder trial. So in a way, I could have interviewed her mom and her sister, but instead their interviews play out in the archive footage. And I'm very grateful to them as well for allowing me to use that, because it's tough stuff to watch on film for sure. Yeah, that's essentially what it is a tribute that way.
Before I jump into my questions, most importantly, how are you doing?
Well, thank you so much. That's just, lovely of you to ask that. I'm actually doing quite well these days, in large part to the completion of the film. I realized how important it had become to me. I initially started out as a tribute to them, got to tell more of my story through this process, and realized how important it was for me. In fact, it might be far more important to me than it is to them, because I think they did so well with moving on in their lives, and I was really stuck. So these days, yeah, I'm doing quite well. As I said to my roommate, I want to live more than ever. Right? I'm behind in my timeline because I was knocked off stride. I tell people that a crane picked me up in June of 1992, which is 29 years ago when my friend was murdered, and that I've been trying to come back down to my life. And I feel like I'm doing that now. So it's been a long time, but I'm doing well. So I really appreciate the question. Thank you.
So, when you started approaching these families, what was it like to approach them? And then all of a sudden, you're kind of invading their space. You're bringing cameras and lights. And we'll talk about the camera work in a minute because your camera work is so beautiful. But talk to us about the process of getting the families on board.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I had gone to visit Chris. He's the first interview. He lives on Salt Spring Island, one of the Gulf Islands up here. And we just had a visit. This wasn't about a film. I was not even thinking about a film when we had the visit. It was just a reconnection. And I stayed over night and had a great visit. And then that really stuck with me. And I kept thinking about Chris. And then he called me at Christmas, that Christmas. And I burst into tears talking to him. And I didn't understand why I had burst into tears. I think I was just so happy to be reconnected with him. And I was starting to feel a release. So I think and I've not been asked that, so I appreciate even thinking in the moment about it. But I think I was just sort of coming out of things through that. And then I realized, I think it was the next day, I phoned him and said, I want to make a film. But at the time, I thought I didn't know what the film was going to be. I just wanted to do something centered around him and Caveat. And of course, that made me think of Ray and Rosalie and so many other families. but I centered on Ray, Rosalie, and Chris because I knew them well through this organization. And I like the commonality of all of them wanted to become directors or wanted to do good things, make the world a safer place, so to speak. And so I then approached, it was that simple. I called Chris and I thought, well, if he's not interested, I'm not going to do it. He was interested. Um, and then called Rosalie and Ray, and they were interested. And I honestly would never know how interested they were. They were just, oh, that sounds okay, sure, Ben, we'll do it. Helping me out with an idea I wanted to do. But they were very gracious with their time. As you say, Dev, I invaded their space. We come right in their homes, and that's you know um, that was a special opportunity for sure. And then you see the photos on the wall right in their homes that they're living with, and that tragedy, and then we use some of the photos in the film, so it all became very, very personal that way. And so that's how I approached it. Just asked if they were interested. I didn't know how long it was going to take to make the film. We ended up shooting the core interviews quite soon after the idea came together, but it's taken, as you know, with the films, they don't always follow a tight timeline, so it took quite a few long months or a couple long years to get it made. Yeah.
When you went in to start, I mean, what I was really impressed with your film is several the emotion. I mean, the emotion of these people. You got some raw emotion on camera. And they obviously trust you. They love you. They've opened up to you. When you went in to shoot these interviews, did you have a list of questions ready, or did you just start the first question and just let it flow?
Almost the latter. I certainly had a couple questions written down. I didn't follow it though. I didn't want to get overwrought about the thing. I didn't want to make sure I hit every question. I've got a writing background, and I've done feature articles on people where you think, well, you better hit all these questions. Well, that's not really important. It's important to pay attention to what they're saying, and react to that, pivot around that. That might bring up something else. So I really only had a handful of questions, and they were very loosely aligned. And I don't even know if I even looked at it during once we started talking. I just knew where I wanted to go. And of course, there's so much footage that was shot that's not used in the film, of course, that I is still very precious to me, and I'll get that to the parents one day because they'll probably want to see the other parts of the interviews, right? So no, I didn't have a strict set of questions. I knew roughly what I wanted to do. I knew that I wasn't going to mention the murders for one, by name, and of course you're going to do that just out of knowledge sometimes through the interview. So whenever they mention the names or I mention the name in a setup, that was edited from the film, of course, because I didn't want to give any more reference to the people that had caused these crimes, because to me, they're not the interesting ones. The families are the interesting ones, and the victims, the innocent parties. And in the case of Ray King, the person who murdered his son is infamous in Canada. He's now deceased, died in prison, but he seeked out media attention throughout after killing all these kids. He killed 11 children. Um, and then he sought media attention and got it, and it really upset the family. So the last thing I wanted to do was put his name in the film. It would really upset Ray in particular. But I thought, no, I'm actually going to make a point of not mentioning the names. And there's also no grisly crime scene photos or anything like that either. But there is some pretty tense media coverage for sure in Angie's case. But yeah, so that was it, and I had that rapport with them on the strength of the rapport we built together, all of us. And there's many, many more families that we all know that have gone through tragedies that in the film credits, I just reference the volunteers a caveat, but there's so many people that come to mind. And there's some families, there's one family in the Valley that I got to know them through their tragedy and sat through parts of the trial. It was a very infamous case up here, and we're still in touch. What that really strikes me, Dev, is how many good people horrible things have happened to, but also to their strength and their character, how great a people maintained. They were able to maintain being such kind people in the face of like unspeakable tragedy, right? So yeah, it's a unique project because of that. And I just knew that it was going to be very important to finish the film. I had no idea if it would be seen by anyone other than the families, though I did plan to submit to a film festival in Vancouver. And as I was mentioning to John, I didn't know about Film Freeway until I submitted to Vancouver Film Fest. That opened me up to other film festivals. And the reason I chose Big Bear is because of the theme of A New Hope.
And it's your world premiere. Congratulations on
Oh,
that.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Before we go, tell me about your friend. Let's talk about your friend. Tell our viewers about what you want us to know.
Thank you. Well, Angie Richards, I met her when we were in grade 8, so like 12 or something like that. And she was a friend to everybody, really. Absolutely, just a outgoing personality, lovely human being, right to her core. Probably the sweetest person I've ever known. And I would not be the only one that would say that. That's universal. And she knew people all over the world. She was a great traveler. She was an actress, and she was going to put herself through helicopter flying school out in Langley, which
Wow.
ultimately is why she was killed, is because she was living in this apartment in Langley and a bad person lived across the hall. But other than that, her life had nothing to do with violence. It was complete antithesis of violence. She was the sweetest, most wholesome person. And I was incredibly lucky to have her as one of my closest people on earth. And it was devastated by the fact that she was ripped from all our lives. And I was completely lost because we were going to be part of one another's life forever in whatever form. We just knew we were always going to be part of one another's life. And we had actually talked about if something happened to us, what we would want our friends and family to do. And that conversation came to me, of course, after she was killed. And she'd say, "Oh, I'd want people to get together and have a beer," kind of thing. And I thought, that's exactly what she would have wanted. However, she could have never conceived of what happened to her. None of
Right.
us could. So that that didn't stick with me in the way that made me feel strong. I just felt devastated by it. So we were homecoming couple on the strength of her sort of campaigning. She just had such a bright light, such a luminous personality that everyone loved her. And honestly, when someone is passed, someone is stolen, really not passed, it's easy to think of only good things to say, but really that's all there is you can say about Angie. She was just a magical person on this earth. And one of the greatest testaments to that is another one of her best friends, Barb Best, and I were at the grave one day, just on probably the anniversary of her birth, not her death. But we were just there, and a person started walking toward us. And we were like, oh, I hope they're not going to talk to us because we're having this very private moment. And the person said, "Oh, excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but I live right here at this house. And I just want to say that she must have been very special." And we were like taken aback. And he says, "Yeah, because when people come here, they stay a long time. And I don't see that happen very often around this graveyard." And I thought, even in death, people get the power of who she was. And that's also why it's stayed with me all my life since. 29 years later to the month, we're at the anniversary, because she had that much of an impact on me. And I certainly could never ever forget her, and nor would I ever want to. But I got to put it in a healthy place now, and the films help me do that.
So it's 29 years next month, correct?
This month, actually,
This
June.
month. What was her favorite beer? So if we wanted to honor her, we have of course we have Independence Day here in the United States coming up. So if we wanted to honor her the next couple of weeks, what was her favorite beer?
I'm going to say it was an import. I don't even remember. I just remember we were at a concert and we were in the mosh pit all dancing up a storm at Blue Roadie up at Whistler. And she ran out to get us all beers and came back with a whole bunch in her arms and handed them out. It was like saving the day. We're all just so hot and sweaty from the mosh pit. And here she hands out 4 beers. So her favorite beer was probably the one she paid for, because she loved doing stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'll say maybe an ale just because that's my favorite. And we were thick as thieves. So I'll be
Oh,
safe.
that is awesome. May her memory always be a blessing to you and your family and your friends and everyone around this world. And I hate to do this, but we're short on time. I really do, appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad you're doing well. Continue to, be healthy, and we'll continue to honor, your friend forever, because this film's going to last forever. It's now out in the world. World premiere this weekend. Congratulations, and thanks for taking the time out and sitting down with me.
Thank you, Dev. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.